So I've had this idea for a while and even wrote half a script, and then I forgot about it, so that was a fun surprise to find on my computer. Anyway, I thought it would be fun to discuss some of Leonardo da Vinci's lovers. Now, first off, this is all conjecture. Leonardo did not keep a list of his relationships, and considering the evidence suggests he was gay, and that was illegal, it makes sense he would not want a written record of that, especially after he got in trouble for it as a young man, but more on that in a moment. And before I get into this, I want to warn you that these men were much younger than Leonardo. They were teenagers, and Leonardo was definitely not, and it's gross. And people will say, oh, you can't judge people from the past by today's standards. One, yes, I can. And two, even by the day's standards, it wasn't all that common. Large age gaps were usually part of a political marriage and not consummated until both people were adults, but that's a conversation for a different time. Anyway, enough introduction. Here are the 4 most likely men Leonardo slept with. Number 1, Jacopo Saltarelli. In 1476, shortly before Leonardo's 24th birthday, 4 men, including Leonardo, were accused of sodomy with Jacopo Saltarelli. Fun fact, this is the same year Assassin's Creed 2 begins. So who was Saltarelli? He was 17 years old, making this Leonardo's most age-appropriate relationship, and he worked in a goldsmith's shop. Most biographers refer to him as a prostitute. A few euphemistically call him a model. However, I've seen a couple point out that sleeping with 4 men doesn't make him a prostitute, so stop slut-shaming Saltarelli. Anyway, the accusation ended up being dismissed because it was made anonymously and no witnesses came forward. Another possible factor is one of the 4 men accused was Leonardo Tornabuoni, who came from a powerful family. To put in perspective, Florence was ruled by the Medici family and the leader was Lorenzo. And Lorenzo's mother was a Tornabuoni. So they weren't the number 1 family in Florence, but they were up there. It's speculated that the court decided not to pursue this lead because they didn't want to deal with that. I also just want to point out this was not some huge scandals like TV shows make it out to be. Yes, sodomy was a serious crime and nobody wanted to be accused. But during this time, literally hundreds of men were accused. The office of the knight really had their hands full. Accusations were so common that the German word Florenzer, meaning Florentine, became slang for sodomite. While I'm sure not all of the accusations were true, I can't believe that none of them were. So while Leonardo was not convicted, it's still possibly true. Number 2, Salai. I've already done a whole video on him, so I'll be brief. His real name was Gian Giacomo Caprotti da Arena, but Leonardo nicknamed him Salai, which means little devil or little unclean one. He earned this nickname for being a thief and just a general troublemaker. He moved in with Leonardo in 1480 when he was 10 and Leonardo was 38. And during the decades they were together, Salai was referred to officially as either Leonardo's apprentice or as his manservant. Now, pretty much everyone assumes they were sleeping together. It's unclear when the relationship became sexual, possibly when Salai was 15, but there's no real way to know. One of the strongest pieces of evidence of this being a sexual relationship is that Leonardo's notebook includes a doodle of 2 penises with legs walking toward a hole labeled Salai. It is believed this was not drawn by Leonardo himself, but probably by one of his students and possibly Salai himself. Notably, he was the model for Leonardo's St. John the Baptist, and also probably his Angel of the Annunciation, but that work has been lost. Number 3, Atalante Migliorotti. I tried. This is one I really don't want to be true because he was possibly the youngest. When they got together, Leonardo was 28 and Atalante was 13. Atalante was a musician and learned to play the lyre from Leonardo. And Leonardo and Atalante were part of the group sent by Lorenzo de' Medici to Milan in 1482. Sometime around 1480 or so, Leonardo drew a portrait of Atalante raising his face. There's a theory this is the basis for Leonardo's portrait of a musician, but we really don't know. Around this time, he also drew a nude boy playing the lyre from behind. And given the timing and the fact Atalante played the lyre, it was probably him. Number 4 is Paolo. He is the one with the least evidence. His name was Paolo de Leonardo da Vinci da Firenze, and the use of de Leonardo da Vinci indicates he was a student of Leonardo. About naming, while it was not a universal practice, it was common for apprentices to take on their master's names. All we really know about him is that he was exiled from Florence for the wicked life he led there. Since he obviously knew Leonardo, it's possible Leonardo was one of those bad influences that led him to this wicked life. But that's really all we can say. That's not much to go on, but I've seen him mentioned in 2 different biographies, so I figured I ought to include him. So those are the 4 men we can name with any degree of certainty. There were probably more, especially since male same-sex relationships were somewhat common at the time, especially amongst artists. I've seen people suggest Francesco Melzi as another possible lover. We don't really have any evidence of that, and I personally don't see their relationship that way, but it's possible. Recently, I've seen a lot of random people on the internet suggest Cesare Borgia, but there's absolutely no proof of that. I think it's fun to pretend he hooked up with Michelangelo because Michelangelo hated him, and everyone loves that good enemies to lovers, back to enemies story. But I think it's safe to say that never happened. And that's all I have for you today. See ya!